worked so hard on all these posters. Thank you so much. Thank you to Scholastic who made this possible. Emily is over there from Scholastic, and Gina Dahlquist up in Seattle arranged all of this for us. So we need to send a big thank you to them. But most important is Deborah Hopkinson, who has taken time out of her day to come and share what it's like to be a writer. And I believe she said in some things that I've read that she started out as a great reader, which all of you are. Something about Deborah Hopkinson, she grew up in Massachusetts, which is the other side of the United States, but she has written some incredible books. All of those books over there, Portola books and school district books that need to be signed. We have so many of her books in San Bruno. The first book I ever learned about that she wrote, my son was younger than you. He was in Gates Summer School, and the teacher was teaching a class about the Underground Railroad, and she was using this book to teach children about the Underground Railroad. Fabulous book. It's an award-winning book. Award-winning book. Award-winning book. Also, one of my favorite, an award-winning book. Another award-winning book. I wish I could knit. Award-winning book. Award-winning book. Award-winning book. Do you guys remember when we did the Cook Prize Award last year? We read 4 books. One of them was about the horseshoe crab. There was one about Ada Lovelace, and I think we chose, as a school, we chose Mesmerized about Ben Franklin and Dr. Mesmer. Yeah. Guess who has a book that we're going to be reading next week for the Cook Prize? Who? You are so right. But what was that again?
Deborah Hopkinson!
I'm getting old. What did you say?
Deborah Hopkinson!
She's here.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I came from Oregon in a big rainstorm, and today I hear it's the first day it's been sunny for a long time, which is a great thing except for the fact that it's a little bright, so hopefully you in the back, you're going to have to really concentrate hard to see the words, because we're going to do some reading together. But before I lived in Oregon and Washington, I lived in a place surrounded by water. And in that place, we said hello a certain way. So I'm going to say it to you, and I want you to say it back to me in good, loud voices so I know you're awake. And you'll know where I used to live. Ready? Aloha.
Aloha!
That's pretty good. Although I was at a school yesterday, and those kids were a little bit, more brighter. So let's try one more time. Aloha. Aloha! Very good. Where did I used to live? Hawaii. So I'm here to talk about books. Raise your hand if you like mysteries. Raise your hand if you like animal stories. How about adventure stories? How about scary stories? So I have some bad news. Those aren't the kinds of books that I write. I write books that are set in the past. Some parts are true, some parts are made up. What do we call those kinds of books? Back in the gray, right there, yeah? Historical fiction, very good. How many people know the difference between historical fiction and nonfiction? Who wants to give me a good definition? The person with the stripes, yes? What's the difference between historical fiction and nonfiction?
The difference is that historical fiction is about history and fiction is about something that can happen.
So historical fiction has parts that could be partly true, but some parts are made up, and nonfiction is based on facts and things that we know and that we can prove. So I'm going to talk about where we get our ideas. Where do you get your ideas for stories? Yeah. From other books is I get my ideas that way sometimes. It's right there, yeah? From your background knowledge, that's a good one. From cats, that sounds like a good one, yeah? From the internet is another way. Anything else? Yeah.
Your imagination.
Your imagination. And you know what? We also get our ideas from our heart, from what we care about, right? But we have to keep our ears and eyes open too. I think about stories as like, you know those little snails that have antennae? Well, I go through like my antenna up to get ideas for stories. And here's one of it that I got from something that I saw. What building is this? Empire State Building. Anyone have any idea how many years old it is? Any guesses? 1,000, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 90, 30. Faculty, guesses? 80-something. History isn't really always about memorizing. Even your teachers might not know the exact date, but by using our eyes, we can make some guesses. Now, what do you need to make a skyscraper? Do you need, like, steel? How do you get to it at the top? On a elevator. What is it makes an elevator go? Electricity. How many people here like to draw? Raise your hand. Oh, good. Okay, hands down. What do we call the person who does the pictures for a book? Say it out. Illustrator. Am I the illustrator? No. In fact, like, you know how kindergartners draw? That's kind of the way I draw. But the illustrator for this book about building the Empire State Building needed to do research. I bet some of you do research in the library or maybe in other books. But he had a special way of doing research. He used old photos. Now you can't see this too well, but this man is building the Empire State Building a long time ago. And we can tell the picture's old because it's black and white. And he doesn't have a hard hat, does he? This is a book called Sky Boys. It has a blue background. It's getting lighter and lighter, so it's harder to see. But you can kind of see the way it's built. This is the first picture in the book. This boy, he has a wagon. Can you see that in the back a little bit there? Here's the, okay. He's going out before school. Let's read these words together. Ready? Here's a pile of wood, free for the taking, all carted off from that old hotel they tore down at 34th and 5th. This is in New York City. And they left the wood, this huge pile of wood for people to get because it was a time in our country when many people were poor. Ready? 600 men are working there, leveling, shoveling, hauling, clearing the rubble away. They're getting ready to make something new, bold, soaring. And they're starting, and there's actual men working on it. Ready? A symbol of hope in the darkest of times. A building, clean and simple and straight as a pencil. And tall, so tall it will scrape the sky. Now you've probably heard about word choice when you're doing stories. Well, I chose these words very carefully, the darkest of times. 4th or 5th graders, or maybe even 3rd graders, do you have any idea of a time in our history that we might have called the darkest of times? Right there? Or before that, yeah? The Great Depression. Anyone know when that was? Yeah?
The Great Depression was like the time that people were getting sad.
It's actually a time where people lost jobs, yeah, and they were sad. There was another recession you might be thinking of, yeah, in the purple? 1930s. So, I have a math problem for you, which maybe some of you can even do in your head, I don't know. Sometimes we have paper to do it. The Empire State Building was finished in 1931. How do we figure out how many years old it is? What do we have to do, yeah? And when is it now? What year? Mine is 1931. Can anyone do that in their head? Yeah? Okay, good guess. Anyone else? You guys? If you know it, say it out. 86. Very good. Good work. Now I have homework for you too, besides math. When you go back to your desk, I want you to pick up a pencil. And I want you to look at your pencil with the tip up. Then I want you to think about this picture right here and pictures of the Empire State Building, because the man who designed the Empire State Building, he got the idea one day when he was looking at his pencil. So one of the most famous buildings in the world came from the inspiration of a very simple object, just like stories come from simple objects sometimes. Now, you can't see these pictures too well because it's a little bright, but here's pictures of the men working on it. And this is the Chrysler Building behind there. If anyone's been to New York, you would notice that building. And they worked really high up. They called them Sky Boys because they were high up in the sky. This is the whole city around him, and it was a long way down. The 5 people died, and if you have this book in your library, or in the public library, you can see some of these pictures are actually in the book, so you can go back and look at them. Does it look scary to you? There you can see. Can you see that? That's the top of like a taxi cab. It's a long way down, right? They climbed up like these scaffolding and these ropes to get there. All right. That's what it looks like from the sky. All right, let's read this together. May 1st, 1931, opening day, finished in record time, 60,000 tons of steel, 10 million bricks, 2,000 tons of marble, 6,500 windows, 70 miles of water pipes, 1,860 stairs, 1 year and 45 days, 7 million man hours, more than 3,000 men. Wow, took a lot, didn't it? And I got all that information from a book that had the old records right in it that they found. Now, this is a story based on something that I read about. And something I saw too. I read about a girl, and she was from California. Her name was Delia Haskett Rawson. She was born in 1861, and when she was 14 years old, she began driving a stagecoach. Do you all know what a stagecoach is, right? And this is a famous highway robber. His name was Charles Bolton, and his nickname was Black Bart. But because I'm writing historical fiction, I'm going to change some things around. Did you have a question? I don't know when he was born, but that's a research question for you, so you can go back and find that. But I can tell you he was born in England, and he was very polite. He had grown up to be a gentleman before he went bad and became a highway robber. It's one of the stories. Can you guess which story this is in? Stagecoach Sal. So did I change her name? Yes. And did I make it a serious story or a funny story? Funny. Now, this is going to be a little harder to read because of our light, but hopefully some of you can read it. So let's say the red parts together. I was knee-high to a grasshopper when Pa first lifted me up to the shotgun seat. There's a stagecoach, and the shotgun seat is right beside the driver. Now, I'll do the parts in white. Now, on this whole wide earth, you won't find anything more dusty and bouncy than a stagecoach journey. And Sal had a very special job. What was her job? Singing to keep all these grumpy passengers happy. I didn't mind helping Pa out by singing, but more than anything, I longed to drive all by myself. Of course, I didn't mean for Pa to fall into a hornet's nest and get so swelled up he couldn't hold the reins. Uh-oh, poor Pa, but that's how she finally got her chance to drive. Now, back then, not only was the stagecoach used for passengers, but it was also used for mail. And this was in California around the California Gold Rush, which was what year? 1840, 49. So all the people in California were sending home letters to those backies. And what would be in the letters? Gold. So when Sal has to take the mail, her ma's kind of upset. Mama flapped her apron in distress. Ready? You mean Sal will be driving alone at night with poetic Pete roaming the countryside? Oh, there she sets off. And there he is. I wasn't worried. I could protect those precious gold nuggets. That notorious, no-good highwayman would be up against a crack shot. Ready? Remember, I took first prize in roping, trick riding, and shooting. Is this the made-up part? Yes. Well, she sets off. We went along fine till we came to the loneliest bend in the road. Suddenly, a fine gentleman popped out and flagged me down with his handkerchief. Please, miss, I'm stranded. Won't you give me a ride to town? I had to think fast. He was a quick draw with words. If I let him get the chance, he would recite a poem like this. Give me all your gold dust now, for my name is Pete the Poet, and if you don't, I'll stick you up before you even know it. So what does she have to do so he won't interrupt her? And that's what we're going to do right now. Now, I don't sing very well, but I try anyway. So hopefully we can all sing. We'll go 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. She'll be coming around the mountain. Ready? She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be driving 4 black horses. She'll be driving 4 black horses. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. Very good. The sun went, the moon came, and still I sang. This one is Polly Wolly Doodle. Ready? Oh, I went down south for to see my Sal, singing Polly Wolly Doodle all the day. My Sal, she am a spunky gal, sing Polly Wolly Doodle all the day. Very good. Suddenly, I felt a heavy weight slump against my shoulder. I'd sung Poetic Pete right off to sleep. Ready? Quick as a cockroach scuttling around a campfire, I whisked out my handcuffs. Wake up, you rhyming robber! The jig is up. And she nudges him off to jail. Is that made up? Yes. That's the story of how I single-handedly snared a crook. I drove that team many more miles. Folks call me Singing Sal, the stagecoach gal. I never got robbed and I never stopped singing. The end. Yay. Now there's Black Bart again. Do you think he looks like him a little bit? And then there's Delia, and there's the real man. And here's an actual Wells Fargo stagecoach. And you probably have that in San Francisco, because in Portland we have one just like this. Yeah. That's a bank, Wells Fargo. So the stagecoaches are in the bank because that's what they actually used them back then. Now, here's a story about something that matters to me, and this is the one that you're going to be reading. My son, Dimitri, when he was in middle school, he went to Costa Rica to help sea turtles, and then he went back again. And so when I got a chance to work on a story with Philippe Cousteau, whose grandfather was a famous marine biology, we thought about doing something about sea turtles. This book takes place in South Carolina, which is on the other side of the country. On which ocean is on that side? Atlantic Ocean. And what ocean do you have? Do we have here? the Pacific. And it's about a girl named Viv who moves to a new town. You can see it's right by the beach. Now she comes in the summer and she has to find her way around. She doesn't know anyone, so she's a little nervous. She's going to summer school too, and when she walks into summer school, she comes in when the whole class is about to do a special project. Yeah. What does that? That's just made up. So this is not a true story. So I made up this, and you'll see why I made it up. I made this up because I wanted the class to get involved in their community and do a special project. And that's what their teacher is telling them that they should do, is find a problem to be solved and make a plan and take action and tell the story. Well, Viv isn't really sure what to do. She takes her 2 dogs to the beach, and suddenly, that's when the story and the problem present itself to her. This person tells her, you can make your sandcastle, but look at this sign over there. When you're done with your sandcastle, you have to make the whole beach flat again. She's not quite sure why. So she goes over to look, and she sees this sign which says, Loggerhead Turtle Nesting Area. The babies need a special way to go from the nest in the sand down to the ocean when they nest. But then Viv discovers something very sad. It's one baby sea turtle who's been facing the wrong way. And because it couldn't get to the ocean in time, the sun came out and the poor little thing died. And she thought, maybe this is a problem that I can help. What is the problem? She has to do research to find out. One way to do research is to see something with your own eyes. And she and her mom go back that night, and that's after she's read some books. That's when she finds out that all the lights in the beach houses here, vacation houses, are they on? Yeah, they're on. But that makes the baby sea turtles confused, because years and years ago, before we had houses by the beach, the brightest light would be over the ocean because the moon would shine on it. So, Viv goes back and tells her whole class about it, and they decide to start a whole project called Lights Out for Loggerheads. Can you all say that? Lights Out for Loggerheads. Well, they have to do lots of research, just like you do, and lots of reading. And they go around to all the houses and they give them fact sheets that tell them loggerheads need dark. Let's keep our houses dark, our beach dark. They raise some money and they have a town meeting to get volunteers to help patrol the beaches and knock on doors and remind people to turn their lights out at night. Put their blinds. They can put their blinds, keep their porch lights out, and keep the blinds down if they have lights on the inside. But then the best part comes later in the summer when they go down to the beach just in time to see the baby sea turtles nesting. And they head off. Which way do they go? The right way into the ocean. So that is the story that you'll be reading for the Cook Prize. There's 3 other books, and one of them is a book I wish I had written. It's about a wolf in Oregon. So I think you like that one too. So you don't have to vote for mine, you should vote for your favorite. Now here's a story about something I was curious about. Does this man look boring to you?
Yes.
Does he look like someone you'd see at the grocery store after school?
Yes.
Does he look like he lived in the past? And we can tell because the picture's in black and white, but also he's got a weird beard and old-fashioned clothes. His name was Henderson Llewellyn. Can you all say Henderson Llewellyn? Henderson Llewellyn. I would like to ask you to look at your teachers, and I would like any teacher who has heard of Henderson Llewellyn to raise their hand. Nobody's heard about him, but guess what? He was part of California history and Oregon history too. He lived in this house in Iowa, and like many people, he had to move for his job, and his job was growing apples. Do you have a question? I'm not sure when he was born. It's probably in my book, but they decided to come and move to Oregon in 1847. And this is the story I wrote about him. When my daddy got ready to pull up roots and leave Iowa for Oregon, he couldn't bear to leave his apple trees behind. So we built some boxes and filled them with good wormy dirt. My daddy was ready for the most daring adventure in the history of fruit. And they set off. Now, along with apples, my daddy took, ready? Peaches, pears, plums, grapes, and cherries. Oh, and by the way, he took us along too. And there they go. The real family had 8 kids. And when they got to Oregon, they had a new baby, and they named him Oregon Columbia. Would you like that name? No. We all had lots to do. Each morning, I helped Mama bake biscuits while Daddy prepared for another long day on the trail. Now, you might expect to see Daddy packing the wagon or feeding the horses, but what is he doing? Eating apples. That Daddy. Delicious has to help her mom. At night, Mom and I tucked in the little ones, and Daddy fiddled lullabies under the stars. I can still hear him crooning. Hush, little babies, don't you cry. Mama's gonna bake you in an apple pie. If that apple pie ain't sweet, Daddy's gonna munch you for his own special treat. And there he is. You can see it better in the real book. Well, we rode along just fine till we came to the Platte River. It was wider than Texas, thicker than Mama's muskrat stew, and muddier than a cowboy's toenails. Great reading. And all the other pioneers just laughed at them and said, "You'll never get those apple trees across." But everyone knows. Raise your hand if you like apples. Oh, everyone knows that apples make someone strong, mighty strong. So those kids, they pulled across. "Don't let my babies go belly up," said Daddy. "How, Daddy?" And before you could say, "Johnny Appleseed," we'd kicked ourselves clear to the other shore. But that is not the end of their trouble. Delicious looks up into the sky, and she sees some foul-looking bunches of clouds. Suddenly, hailstones big as plums came hurtling out of the sky. Guard the grapes, protect the peaches. And I think probably some of you know that when we use the first sounds, we call that alliteration. Everyone has to help, even baby Albert. But that is not the end of their trouble, I'm sad to say. Poor Daddy, he's afraid his little trees are going to shrivel up. Once again, Delicious has to help save the day, looking for the next water hole. She doesn't find it, but she finds everything that got blown away, with just a little bit of water left in it, just enough to get them by. Well, we kept on going past Courthouse Rock and Chimney Rock and Independence Rock and lots of other rocks that didn't have names. Just 100 miles to go. You can barely see it, but don't drop that baby. Ready? But time was running out. Our little trees that almost drowned in the river got pounded by hailstones and got withered by drought. How much more could they take? They'd been walking all summer long, and now Jack Frost was going to come creeping across the grass. But then Delicious picks up a flaming stick and throws it right at him. Before you could say, Peter Piper picked a peck of pretty pippins. And that low-down scoundrel was hightailing it out of there, heading straight for Walla Walla, Washington. Can you all say Walla Walla, Washington? Is that a real place? Yes, and guess what? I was living in Walla Walla, Washington when I wrote this book, and that's why I put it in there. Not many people know that. Ready? Sure enough, all Daddy's trees survive, just as if they'd come across the plains in a swanky carriage, a fancy carriage. They pull down the Columbia and plant those trees in the sweet Oregon dirt at last. Not long after, gold was discovered and people went to California for the gold rush. What year? 1849. Thousands of people rushed to seek their fortune, but not us. we already had our fortune. Those apples, peaches, pears, plums, grapes, and cherries made us richer than any prospector. We were happier too. We had lots of apples, and apples are delicious. Very good. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about Titanic. Its anniversary is coming up on April 15th. It sank in 1912. I'm not sure if you can see in the back there, but can you see how small these men are? These are the men and these the propellers of the Titanic. Can you save your question for a little later, please? It was built in Belfast, Ireland, and it took hundreds of men, maybe even 1,000, to make it work. Just think about the Empire State Building. Well, this was just like that, a big project. And it left on its maiden voyage on April 10th, 1912. Maiden means its first voyage. People were so excited. It was the biggest ship and also the most fancy. Talk about swanky, it was luxurious. Now, when I looked for someone to write about, I chose this man right here. When he was just a little boy, he lost his parents, but he had a very kind uncle. His parents died, but his uncle took care of him and got him two very special presents in his life. His name was Frank Brown. Can you guess what one present was? A camera. And then his second present, when Frank Brown was about 30 years old, his uncle gave him a one-day ticket on the Titanic. How could you be on the Titanic for one day? Well, the Titanic made 2 stops before it set off from England across which ocean? The Atlantic, all the way to New York City, right where we saw that first book in New York City. The story goes, that first night in the dining hall, a very rich couple from New York took a liking to this young man and said, "It's so wonderful that you're taking all these pictures. We could pay your way, and you could come and stay on the boat all the way to New York, and we'll pay your way home, too." But he was studying to be a priest. He couldn't make that decision himself. He had to ask for permission. He sent a telegram on the boat. And they said, no, you need to come back and keep finishing your schooling. So he did that. And because he got off the boat after 24 hours, we have the only photos that we have of the actual voyage. This was his cabin. You can go online and you can see them, Frank Brown's Titanic album. And the only photograph we have of people walking on the boat deck next to those lifeboats. And what do we know about the lifeboats? There weren't enough. The grand staircase. And then this is the last photograph that he took. He probably came off the boat on a small little boat like this and stood on the shore. And then people, you can see them on the deck here, and it was going across the ocean. Well, then, on Sunday night, April 14th at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic struck an iceberg. And within 3 hours, it had sunk. But what that means is if you were on a cruise ship today, you'd have people would have their cell phones, and they'd have pictures. But did anyone have a camera that was left? No. So the only thing we know about the actual sinking is what people told to artists. And this is one of the artists. The next photos that we have are the next morning. Around 8:30 in the morning, the Carpathia picked up the last survivors. There were 20 men who spent the night on this lifeboat right there. Why is that lifeboat not right side up? Any guesses? Something flipped it? Can you guess? It sank you're right, it sank too fast. Right at 2:15 in the morning on the boat deck, right where we saw the other lifeboats, this boat was kept on top of like a special little platform, and it was stored upside down just like this. And they were about to right it up and put people in it, but the water came too fast. So 20 men swam to it and stayed the night on top of it. And in the morning, the sea got rougher, and so they tried to get into another lifeboat. And that's a picture of the lifeboats. The people on the rescue ship, they were on top here, and they took pictures of the men and women who had survived coming up. It wasn't until years later, when they found the wreck of the Titanic, that they actually knew that it had broken in half. Now, this book is nonfiction. That means that I didn't make up anything, not like in the other books. I used primary sources and research. I have 2 other nonfiction books from Scholastic, and this one will be in the book fair, is that right, Emily? This is Courage and Defiance, about spies, saboteurs, and survivors in World War II, and this might be a good book for 4th and 5th graders. And then I have a new book called Dive. Now, I showed you this because some people ask, oh, do I do the covers, or who makes the decision? Well, the publisher, Scholastic, makes the decision about the covers. And these were 2 possible covers for Dive. Now, raise your hand if you think this one is better. Raise your hand if you think this one is better. And if we look on the stage over here, we have the one that the publisher chose. Which one do you think it was? This one. And why do you like it better? It has more explosions, right? But you can also see that it's a submarine better. These are my 2 new books coming out this spring, A Letter to My Teacher, which is in time for Teacher Appreciation Day, and I hope that you will all appreciate your teachers. And Independence Cake is about the first cookbook in America. And before we leave, I also wanted to show you my dogs. This is my dog, Little Rue. She's a Cocker Spaniel. And this is her friend, Brooklyn. So, we have some time for questions, but I want to leave you with these questions. What do you care about? What are you curious about? And what will you write about? So keep reading and writing. So now what I'd like to, let's go back to Little Rue so you can see her. I'd like you to put your hands above your head. Take a deep breath. Bring it down. Shake your shoulders. Put your head from side to side. Okay. So rules for questions, because we have a big group. When I call on you for questions, I would like you to stand up to answer the question, and then I want everyone else to listen to the question, because maybe you have the same question in your head. So, does anyone have any questions? Okay, let's start. Person with the glasses, please stand up. Thank you. Who inspired me to write books? I think my teachers inspired me, and also reading other books and really liking stories. All right, over in the corner. Yeah.
Why do you like writing books?
So I like it because it's hard. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? How many people here raise your hand if you play sports? Okay, put your hands down. If you've played sports for more than a year, raise your hand if you think you're better than when you started. But it was hard at first, right? Well, reading and writing is the same, and it doesn't necessarily get any easier, so it's always still hard. And the second reason is I always learn something new. All right, other questions? Right here. Since when did I start writing? So, thank you. I started writing when I was in 4th grade, practicing, but it took a long time for me to actually sell a book. So my little girl was like 3 years old by then. Person in the glasses way in the back. My most favorite book? Well, actually, I really like my new book, Dive, because I had so much fun researching it. Has anyone here ever been in a submarine? Don't you have one in San Francisco at the museum? Maybe you'll have a chance to go. Voices off. We have a submarine in Portland, but guess where it is? It's in a river. But my husband and I went, and I got to do some research right in the submarine. Let's see, in the blue? Yeah. The first book I've ever written is one that, right there, Sweet Clara and the Freedom Book. It took me 3 years to get it published. Yes? The books I have in the book fair are Titanic and Courage and Defiance, and this book, Under the Quilt of Night, the illustrator is the same illustrator who did Sky Boys. James Vance. So if you like the pictures in Skyboys, you might like those pictures. Let's see, someone who hasn't asked a question yet? Yeah. Stand up. Oh, when did I start writing Titanic? So sometimes I study history and I thought the 100th anniversary of Titanic was coming in 2012. So my editor and I got the idea 2 years in advance, and that's when I started to research it. Let's see, way in the back in the purplish, pinkish. Do I have kids? Yes, I have 2 kids, Rebecca and Dimitri, and I have a new grandson named Oliver. And I'm going to start, he's only 6 months old. I'm going to put his picture up there. That's Rebecca's little boy. Yeah. The second book I wrote is called Birdie's Lighthouse. And it's about a girl who lived in a lighthouse. That's it right there. Right there. Thank you. Okay. Stand up. I think maybe Titanic is my most famous book, and maybe Sweetfire. Way in the back with the glasses, yeah. That's a good question. Why do I like writing historical books? Because A, I learned something, and also I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is a very historical city. And somebody back there has a very eager question. Yes, go ahead. How many books have I written? I've written about 50 books, and I still have some more to do. Now, I have a favor to ask before I leave, which is, it's because I know a lot of you do play sports. It's getting to be spring, and it's a very busy time of the year. And sometimes I know you get home and you have homework, and it's hard to read. So I have 2 favors. One is to try to keep reading every night. And then I want you to challenge yourself. So if you really like realistic fiction, try to read nonfiction. If you really like fantasy, try to read science fiction. So will you try that for me? All right, so keep reading. You were a great audience, and I'll be around to sign books. All right. Okay.
Do you get to choose what you get to write about, or is your editor like a teacher and give you an assignment?
Sometimes it goes both ways. Sometimes I come up with an idea, and do I still get rejected? I had like 5 books ideas last year that never really get made into books. And then sometimes my editor has an idea. So yes, good question. I used to work full-time, and I stopped doing my full-time job 3 years ago, after I got fired. And now my job is either to go to schools all over the country and also to write books. So thank you all very much.
Let's thank Deborah for coming today, our very first author at Portola. Now some of you have your books, correct, that you bought yesterday? Raise your hand if you have your book with you. Excellent. If you have money to purchase the 3 books up here, now is this okay if the teachers will stay here? And if you remain here, if you have money to purchase the 3 books here, the book fair will be open at lunch recess, and then, or the we brought before. Thank you so much. Mrs. Hopkinson was correct. Keep reading. And I love this.
So stay seated if you either have a book for me to